Brothers, peace is a costume. Leaving the war zone does not mean the war leaves the bones. Sometimes the silence is louder than gunfire. Then comes the breach. The safe zone gets tapped on the shoulder by something ugly. A 6-year-old kid walks into a Seattle charity gala, looks up at a quiet man with a German Shepherd at his side, and says one word that stops the whole room. Dad. Now a mother in a cleaning uniform is cornered by suits and whispers. A clip hits the internet. A man who lives on leverage starts tightening the noose. So let me ask you, brothers, when the wall closes in, do you run or do you hold the line? Sit down, stay close to the fire. This one is for every protector who ever had to choose truth over comfort. The word that stopped the room. Seattle wore its winter like a damp coat. Mist clung to glass towers, rain stitched the streets in silver threads, and every headlight smear on wet pavement looked like a secret trying to escape. Jack Mercer stood just off the center of the ballroom, where the chandelier light was warm enough to make people forget the cold outside. He never truly forgot. At 40, tall and broad-shouldered, he carried the quiet fatigue of a man who had learned to survive first and feel later. His face was angular, jaw squared, nose straight, forehead slightly high. A neatly trimmed beard framed his mouth, with a few gray strands at the temples that made him look older than his years. His dark brown eyes could soften when he chose, but when they focused, they cut clean. He wore the same thing he wore in every winter that mattered: a mid-thigh navy coat over a red and black plaid flannel, faded jeans, and brown low-cut leather boots. Nothing flashy, nothing that asked for attention. At his left, Ranger sat close, a black and tan German Shepherd with erect ears and amber-brown eyes that never stopped reading the room. The dog did not fidget, did not bark. He simply watched, alert in a calm way that made Jack breathe easier. A service dog, not in the sense of comfort alone, but in the sense of discipline and partnership. Ranger's stillness was a steady hand on Jack's shoulder, even when no hand could be trusted. The charity gala buzzed with a polished kind of kindness. People in tailored suits laughed a little too brightly. Dresses shimmered. Wine glasses clinked in careful rhythms. A banner near the stage promised support for veterans and children of fallen service members. Jack had signed the checks without wanting his name on anything. He had learned that attention could turn into a weapon. He had come tonight for one reason: make sure the money ended up where it was supposed to. Make sure nobody got hurt in the gaps between applause. He scanned exits, counted bodies, noticed the small, harmless details that everyone else missed. A waiter with trembling hands. A woman at the far wall who kept touching her necklace like she was checking if it was still there. A security guard who stood like a statue but kept blinking too fast. Then he noticed her. Emma Brooks moved like someone trying to take up less space than her own shadow. She was in a plain dark uniform, practical pants, simple sneakers. Medium height, slim but strong from work that never ended. Brown hair pulled back tight, a face that might have been soft if exhaustion had not set its stamp into her eyes. Her hands looked raw at the knuckles, the kind of dryness that came from chemicals and cold water and never having time to care. She pushed a cleaning cart along the edge of the room, slipping between columns, keeping her gaze low. Jack knew that type of invisibility. He had worn it himself, in different places, for different reasons. Emma's attention was all outward. She watched guests' feet, watched spills before they happened, watched for the exact moment she could step in and disappear again. Her expression was controlled, but her shoulders held tension like a trapped breath. Protective, cautious. The kind of woman who measured the world by what it could do to her child. Because, of course, there was a child. Jack saw him a second later, not where he should have been. A small boy, barely 6, with messy, dark hair and hazel-brown eyes that seemed too sharp for his age. He moved with the reckless confidence of someone who still believed adults could fix anything. He darted out from a side corridor into the open space of the ballroom, sneakers whispering over polished floors. Ranger's ears flicked. Jack's posture shifted, subtle, controlled. Not alarm, just readiness. He watched the boy's path, the way he avoided bodies instinctively, the way he aimed for the center like he belonged there. Emma spotted him and froze. Jack felt it before he understood it, the way her face drained of color, the way her grip tightened on the cart handle. Fear, not of a tantrum, not of embarrassment, but of something deeper. The kind of fear that lived under years. The boy reached Jack as if pulled by a cord. He looked up. For a moment, Jack saw a strange reflection in those eyes. A familiar shape, a tilt of the head. Something that landed in Jack's chest without asking permission. "Dad." The word was not shouted. It was clear, confident, innocent. A ripple ran through the room. Conversations paused mid-sentence. A laugh died in someone's throat. A fork hovered above a plate. Even the jazz quartet seemed to soften, as if the music itself did not want to interrupt. The boy smiled, bright and unshakable. "Can we play catch after supper?" Jack did not speak. His mind tried to assemble the moment like a map. He had stood in chaos before. He had made decisions in seconds. But this was a different kind of danger, one that didn't come with training. Emma rushed forward, moving fast now, abandoning her careful invisibility. Her eyes were wide, and her voice came out strained, almost breaking. "I'm so sorry," she said, breathless. He doesn't know what he's saying." She scooped the boy up, holding him close as if her arms could erase the sound that had just filled the room. Her face was turned toward Jack, but she did not fully meet his eyes. Not yet. Her whole body was a shield. Jack studied her anyway. He kept his voice low, steady, so only she would hear. "What's his name?" Her lips parted, then closed. A flicker of panic crossed her features, like she hadn't planned for questions that simple. "Caleb," she whispered. The boy twisted slightly in her arms, still looking at Jack. "Mom, I just wanted to ask him." Emma tightened her hold. "We're leaving." Jack nodded once. He did not step closer. He understood corners. He understood what it meant to feel trapped. Around them, the room began to breathe again. The whispers started, soft at first, then multiplying. A man in an expensive suit smirked. A woman near the bar raised her phone just a little. Someone chuckled, sharp and mean, like entertainment had finally arrived. From near the stage, Nora Lane moved toward them. She was in her late 30s, posture straight, eyes calm and clear. A lawyer's presence, practical and unromantic. The kind of person who could stand in a storm without pretending it wasn't raining. "Please," Nora said, voice firm but polite, addressing the nearest cluster of guests. "Give them space." Emma used the opening and carried Caleb toward a service corridor. Her steps were quick, urgent. She did not look back. Jack watched her go. Something in him tightened, the same way his left knee tightened before cold weather. Ranger remained still, but his gaze followed Emma and the child until they disappeared through the door. Jack felt the weight of the word again. Dad. Not as an accusation. As a truth the child had decided to speak out loud. At the edge of the crowd, Derek Vaughan observed the entire scene with a polished smile that never warmed. Mid-40s, lean, clean-cut, eyes calculating. He wore an operations manager's confidence like armor, and he watched Emma not with concern, but with interest. Like a man spotting a loose thread he could pull. Jack met Derek's eyes for a brief second. Derek's smile sharpened, just slightly. Jack knew that look. It was not curiosity. It was opportunity. The service hallway rain kept tapping Seattle's windows like an impatient finger. The city smelled of wet stone and cold metal, and the night after the gala felt heavier, as if the air itself remembered the word that stopped the room. Emma Brooks moved through the service corridor with Caleb pressed against her shoulder, his small arms tight around her neck. The hallway was narrow, lit by fluorescent strips that made everything look too real. Her breath came fast, not from the weight of her child, but from the weight of the stairs she could still feel on her skin. She told herself one thing over and over. Get out. Get home. Let the world forget. Caleb's face was turned toward the direction they'd come from. He wasn't crying. That was what hurt. His eyes were wide, processing, trying to make adult logic out of adult cruelty. "Mom," he whispered, "I just wanted to ask him." Emma swallowed hard. She wanted to tell him that wanting something wasn't always safe. She wanted to tell him that some rooms had rules written in invisible ink. But she couldn't let those words touch him yet. "We're leaving," she said, voice steady by force. "That's all." Her footsteps slowed when she reached the employee junction, where the hallway split toward the loading dock, the staff lockers, and the back stairwell. That was when a man stepped into her path like he'd been waiting. Derek Vaughan looked mid-40s, lean and polished, with a clean haircut and a smile that belonged on a billboard, not in a hallway like this. His suit jacket was dark and perfectly fitted, his tie sitting neat against his collar as if he never had to run. His eyes, though, were the kind that measured people the way accountants measured numbers. He didn't look at Caleb with concern. He looked at him like a liability. "Emma," he said softly, as if they were discussing schedules and not a disaster. "We need to talk." Emma's stomach tightened. Derek was operations. He knew everyone's badge number, everyone's hours, everyone's weak spots. He was the kind of man who could ruin a person without raising his voice. "I'm taking my son home," Emma said. Derek's smile didn't move. "That incident out there," he said, nodding toward the ballroom, "can become a problem. For the event, for the donors, for the center." Emma held Caleb closer. "He's 6. And the internet doesn't care," Derek replied, still gentle. "If someone posts the wrong clip, it becomes a story. Then it becomes an investigation. Then it becomes consequences." Emma felt the word consequences like a slap. She knew what he meant. Background checks. Termination. Improper access. Unprofessional conduct. She could already see the paperwork. Derek lowered his voice. "I can protect you," he said. "But I need you to help me help you." Emma's jaw clenched. "What do you want?" "A simple resignation," Derek said, like he was offering a gift. "Voluntary. Quiet. You walk away, and this never follows you." You keep your dignity. Emma's heart thudded. He wasn't protecting her. He was removing her. Because people like her weren't supposed to make scenes in rooms like that. She shook her head once. No. Derek's smile sharpened, just a fraction. Emma, don't make this harder than it has to be. Behind Emma, Ranger's nails clicked once on the floor. One small sound, controlled. Then Jack Mercer appeared at the end of the corridor. He looked the same as he had in the ballroom, like a man who refused to perform. Tall, broad-shouldered, face angular and steady. A neatly trimmed beard with faint gray at his temples. Dark brown eyes that didn't flinch. He wore a mid-thigh navy winter coat over a red and black plaid flannel, faded jeans, brown leather boots. He moved with a slight stiffness in his left knee, but his posture said he would not back up. Ranger walked at his side, calm and alert, ears up, gaze tracking Derek without a sound. A service dog in the purest sense. Not decoration, not threat, just presence. Derek turned, his expression shifting into something polite. "Mr. Mercer," he said smoothly, "this is an internal matter." Jack's voice was quiet, controlled. "You're blocking an employee who's leaving with her child." Derek chuckled, soft and cruel. "I'm trying to prevent a scandal." Jack didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. "The scandal," he said, "is you cornering her back here." Emma felt something in her chest loosen and tighten at the same time. Relief. Fear. She didn't want Jack involved. Involving him meant attention, and attention was the monster she'd spent 6 years outrunning. Derek's eyes flicked to Ranger, then back to Jack. "You don't understand the optics." Jack's gaze held steady. "I understand pressure tactics. I don't like them." There was a pause where the hallway seemed to hold its breath. Derek's smile stayed, but his eyes hardened. "Fine," he said. "Go home, Emma. We'll speak tomorrow." Emma didn't respond. She walked past him, Caleb still clinging, her body braced for Derek's hand to grab her arm. It didn't. Jack didn't follow her. That surprised her most. He simply watched her go, giving her space the way a soldier gives a wounded person room to breathe. Ranger's eyes followed Emma and Caleb until they turned the corner. Derek waited until they were out of earshot. "This won't end cleanly," he murmured to Jack. Jack's expression didn't change. "That depends on you." Emma drove home with both hands tight on the wheel. Caleb sat silent in the passenger seat, staring at the rain on the glass like it was a puzzle with missing pieces. The apartment was small, warm only because the heater never fully stopped working. Emma fed him soup. She brushed his hair. She tucked him in with hands that would not stop shaking. When she finally sat alone on the couch, the silence was loud. Her mind replayed the ballroom, Caleb's voice, Jack's eyes, Derek's smile. She had built her life on one rule: stay unseen, keep Caleb safe. Tonight, both of those rules had shattered. Across the city, Jack stood at his own window, rain streaking the glass. Ranger lay on the floor beside him, still as stone, but awake. Jack's left knee ached the way it always did when storms rolled in. He barely noticed. He couldn't stop seeing Caleb's face. That tilt of the head, those eyes. He had seen fear before. He had also seen certainty. Caleb had sounded certain. Jack hated uncertainty more than pain. He reached for his phone and called Nora Lane. She picked up on the second ring, voice crisp, tired, practical. "You're still awake," she said. "I need a favor," Jack replied. Nora didn't ask why. She was the kind of woman who saved questions for later. What is it? I need to find Emma Brooks, Jack said. Not for a headline, not for a scene. I just need a conversation. There was a pause. Then Nora exhaled. I'll see what I can do, she said, carefully. Jack thanked her, hung up, and stood in the dark a long time. In the next room, Caleb lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. Emma heard his voice, small and steady, cutting through the quiet like a needle. Mom, he said, if he's not my dad, why does he look like me? Emma closed her eyes. That was the moment she knew. Running wouldn't erase the truth. It would only teach her son that truth was something to fear. Truth by the water. Seattle's rain thinned to a mist, the kind that didn't fall so much as linger. Gray clouds pressed low over Lake Union, and the water held the city's lights like dim, trembling coins. Emma Brooks arrived early and chose a bench where she could see every path leading into the park. Habit. Survival. She wore a worn winter coat pulled tight at the collar, hair tied back in a low, practical knot. Her eyes looked tired in daylight, the exhaustion harder to hide without fluorescent lights to blame. She kept Caleb close, fingers resting on his shoulder as if touch alone could anchor him to safety. Caleb swung his legs and watched ducks cut slow lines through the water. He clutched a small sketch pad, the corners bent from being carried everywhere. His hazel-brown eyes tracked movement with a sharp, stubborn focus that didn't fit his age. Emma had told herself she wouldn't come. Then Caleb had asked that question again last night, soft and steady, like a truth that refused to be lulled to sleep. If he's not my dad, why does he look like me? Emma had no answer that didn't bruise. She heard footsteps behind her before she saw him. Not because he was loud, but because her body never fully relaxed. She turned. Jack Mercer approached at a measured pace, tall and broad-shouldered, navy winter coat hanging mid-thigh over the red and black plaid flannel that seemed like a uniform he'd never retire. Faded jeans, brown, low-cut leather boots. His gait was slightly stiff, the left knee holding a quiet complaint with each step. He didn't hide it. He didn't dramatize it either. His face was angular, jaw squared, beard trimmed neat with a few gray strands at the temples. His dark brown eyes were calm but watchful, like someone who had learned to read danger even in peaceful places. At his side, Ranger moved with the same steady restraint. Black and tan coat, erect ears, amber brown eyes scanning the park without a sound. A service dog. Not just a label, but a presence. Ranger's calm made space around Jack, like the world softened a step back. Jack stopped a respectful distance away. He didn't assume he was welcome. Emma stood, instinctively placing her body between Jack and Caleb. You found us. Jack nodded once. Nora helped. She didn't give me your address. She gave me a place. Emma's mouth tightened. Nora Lane's caution had been a mercy. Emma didn't know if she deserved mercy anymore. Caleb leaned around his mother's side and stared at Jack like he was trying to solve a riddle. His voice came out small but brave. You're the man from the big room. Jack lowered his head slightly, meeting the boy at eye level without crouching too fast. Yeah, he said. I'm Jack. Caleb blinked. I'm Caleb. Jack's expression softened for a beat, like warmth slipping through a crack. I know. Emma's heart jolted. How? Jack didn't flinch. He glanced at her, then back to Caleb. Your mom said it in the hallway. Emma remembered. The word had slipped out in panic. She hated that her life could change because of one name spoken out loud. Caleb looked at Ranger. Is he a police dog? Ranger sat, still and attentive, eyes on Caleb but not pressing closer. Jack's hand rested lightly near Ranger's shoulder, not to restrain, but to connect. He's my service dog, Jack said. Caleb's face brightened with child logic. So he helps you? Jack breathed out a short, almost smile. Yeah, he helps me. Emma heard the gentleness in Jack's voice and felt anger rise anyway. Gentleness could be a weapon too. It could make you trust, and trust was dangerous. What do you want? Emma asked. Her tone came sharper than she intended, but she didn't soften it. If this is about fixing optics or buying silence, don't. Jack's eyes held steady. I'm not here for optics. Then why are you here? Jack glanced toward the water, as if he needed the horizon to say something hard. Then he looked back at her. Because your son looked at me and called me Dad. Emma's throat tightened. She hated hearing the word again. I didn't teach him that, she said quickly. I never told him anything. I believe you, Jack replied. The calm certainty in his voice hit her harder than accusation would have. Emma's hands curled into fists inside her coat pockets. You don't know me. Jack nodded. No, I don't. That's why I asked for this. A conversation. Emma's pulse hammered. She could feel Caleb watching her, waiting. This was the moment she'd been dodging for years, dressed in excuses and bedtime stories. Jack's voice stayed low. I'm going to ask you one question. You don't owe me an answer today, but I need to ask it. Emma's breath caught. She already knew the question. Is Caleb mine? The words landed clean and heavy, like a stone dropped into still water. Emma looked away, toward the lake, toward the skyline half swallowed by mist. Her mind flashed through 6 years in fragments. Night shifts, cheap cereal, tiny shoes outgrown too fast. Caleb asleep on her arm while she studied bills. The staff cottage behind the center. The way Derek could erase her with paperwork. And the night it began. The one she had tried to bury. Not romance, not a fairy tale. A moment of 2 broken people taking shelter in each other because the world felt too sharp to face alone. Emma swallowed. If I say yes, she whispered, what happens to us? Jack didn't answer with promises. He didn't say he'd make everything easy. He didn't offer money like a shield. He simply said, then I stop being absent. Emma's eyes stung. She hated that those words stirred hope. Hope was the most dangerous thing she could give her son. Hope could break him. Caleb's voice cut in, honest and small. Mom, I wasn't trying to make trouble. Emma crouched beside him, brushing his hair back with shaking fingers. I know, baby. Caleb looked at Jack, then down at his sketch pad. I feel like he's mine, he said quietly, as if he didn't quite understand his own sentence. Like my dad. Emma's chest tightened until it hurt. Children didn't speak in court language. They spoke in need. Jack's gaze dropped for a moment. Emma saw something pass across his face, fear, maybe, or grief. Not for himself. For the weight a child could carry without knowing. Emma stood again, drawing a long breath through the cold. Yes, she said, the word barely louder than the mist. He's yours. Silence stretched between them, not empty, but charged, like air before lightning. Jack didn't move. He didn't reach for Caleb. He didn't invade the space Emma had guarded with her life. He just let the truth exist. Ranger shifted slightly, then settled again, calm, as if this was a moment that required stillness. Emma's voice shook. I didn't tell you because I was scared. Not of you, of everything around you. People like Derek, they don't see me as a person. Jack's jaw tightened at Derek's name, a controlled anger sharpening his eyes. He cornered you. Emma nodded once. He'll do worse if this becomes a story. Jack's gaze flicked to the path behind them, scanning, instinctive. Then we make sure it doesn't become his story. Emma wanted to believe him. She wanted to let her shoulders drop, to stop fighting the world alone. But the world didn't pause just because she finally said yes. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. One notification, then another, then 3 more, like a door being kicked in. She pulled it out, and her stomach dropped. A blurry video clip from the Gala had been posted somewhere. Caleb's small voice, the word Dad, Jack's face turning. The caption underneath was cruel. Janitor's kid crashes fundraiser. Is the donor the father? Emma's hands went cold. The comments were worse. People laughed. People judged. People invented motives. People turned her into a villain in a story she hadn't written. Caleb looked up at her expression and immediately sensed danger. Mom? Emma's throat closed. She couldn't protect him from words once they were loose in the world. Jack saw the screen. His eyes darkened, not with panic, but with something steadier. Decision. He didn't take the phone. He didn't tell her to calm down. He simply said, Look at me. Emma's gaze snapped to his. I'm not letting them chew you up, Jack said, voice low and absolute. Not you, not him. The mist thickened over the water, hiding the far shoreline. The city around them felt suddenly smaller, like a room closing in. Emma had spent 6 years surviving by disappearing. Now disappearing was no longer an option. And in the quiet space between rain and breath, Jack Mercer stood there, in his navy coat and red and black flannel, Ranger steady at his side, and made the kind of promise that didn't sound like romance. It sounded like war. Only this time, the thing he was protecting was a child's heart. Leverage Seattle's winter rain came back in sheets, drumming on rooftops and turning every sidewalk into a mirror. The air tasted like iron and pine, and rumors moved through the city faster than water down a gutter. Emma Brooks learned what it meant to be seen. Not the gentle kind of seen, where someone notices the way you carry too much. The cruel kind, where strangers decide who you are from a shaky clip and a caption meant to sting. She kept her phone face down on the kitchen table, but it didn't stop the buzzing. Messages from numbers she didn't recognize, a coworker's cautious text, a link, another link, a headline that wasn't a headline yet, but wanted to become one. She went to work anyway. The center's back entrance smelled of wet cardboard and disinfectant. Emma pushed her cleaning cart through the service door, shoulders tense, hair pulled back, hands already dry and aching. She told herself to keep moving. If she kept moving, she wouldn't feel how the building had changed around her. People looked at her now. Not the guests, the staff. 2 women near the lockers fell silent as she passed. A maintenance tech stared too long and then pretended he hadn't. Someone whispered her name like it was a warning. Emma kept her eyes forward, as if looking down would make her smaller and looking up would make her angry. In the operations office, Derek Vaughn waited. He stood as if he belonged to the building more than the building belonged to him. Lean frame, clean haircut, pressed suit, that practiced smile like a lock clicking shut. His eyes were cool, counting. "Emma," he said, voice warm enough to fool anyone who didn't know him. "Come in." Emma didn't. She stayed in the doorway. "I'm on shift." Derek's smile widened. "Exactly. And this shift is about to become complicated." He tapped a folder on the desk. Papers. Forms. The kind that could erase a person's life with a signature. "You caused a disturbance at a donor event," Derek said, as if she'd thrown a chair. "You brought unauthorized access into a secured area. You exposed the center to reputational risk." Emma's throat tightened. "My son is 6. Derek shrugged, almost sympathetic. "The public doesn't care. Sponsors don't care. The board won't care." He slid a document across the desk. "Voluntary resignation," he said. "Sign, and we'll keep it quiet." Emma stared at the paper. Her hands shook, not with indecision, but with rage she had trained herself to swallow. "And if I don't?" Derek leaned forward slightly. His voice softened, like he was offering a secret. "Then we open an inquiry. HR gets involved. Your employment ends anyway, but not cleanly, and since your name is already floating around online." He let the sentence dangle, sharp as a hook. Emma felt her pulse in her ears. She thought of Caleb at school. Caleb's little shoulders. Caleb's brave face trying to hold steady when adults turned mean. She imagined him hearing words like scandal and trap and liar. Emma's nails bit into her palms. "You're doing this because you can." Derek's smile flickered. "I'm doing this because you put us all at risk." Emma turned to leave. Derek's voice followed her. "Oh, and Emma, don't accept any gifts. Donors have lawyers. If money moves, it changes the story." Emma stepped into the corridor and leaned against the wall, breathing through pain that didn't have a place in her body. She wanted to call Jack. She wanted to tell him to stay away because his shadow was swallowing her life. She wanted to tell him not to come because she was afraid of how safe she might feel if he did. At the far end of the service hall, she saw him anyway. Jack Mercer stood with Nora Lane near a staff entrance, his posture calm, his presence heavy in a way that didn't require noise. The navy coat, the red and black plaid flannel beneath it. Faded jeans, brown boots. His left knee held that familiar stiffness, but his shoulders stayed squared. Ranger sat close by his leg, black and tan coat, sleek even in the damp, ears up, amber eyes taking in every movement without a sound. A service dog, steady as a heartbeat. Nora looked exactly like herself, late 30s, precise and composed, eyes sharp with the kind of intelligence that didn't waste words. She carried a slim folder, held like a boundary. Emma's first instinct was to retreat. Her second was to stand still because running had started to feel like surrender. Jack met her eyes. He didn't rush her. He didn't ask permission with his mouth. He asked with his posture, leaving her space to choose. Emma walked toward them, each step heavier than the last. "You shouldn't be here," she whispered when she reached them. "I'm not here for the spotlight," Jack said quietly. "I'm here for you and Caleb." Emma's voice shook. "They're coming after my job." Nora's gaze sharpened. "Derek?" Emma nodded. Jack's jaw tightened, controlled anger flickering behind his eyes. What did he offer? A resignation, Emma said, or an investigation. Nora opened her folder. That's what we expected. Emma stared at her. Expected? Nora's expression didn't soften, but it wasn't cold. It was steady. After the gala, we reviewed internal complaints. Derek has a pattern. Emma felt a chill that had nothing to do with Winter. Complaints? Nora nodded. Quiet pressure. Threats dressed up as policy. We've seen it before. People don't report it because they're scared. Emma's stomach turned. So I'm not the first. Jack's voice lowered. You're the one he picked today. Emma's mind flashed back to the hallway. Derek's smile. His careful words. The way he made cruelty sound like procedure. Emma had thought she was alone. She had been surviving like it was a solitary sport. Jack's phone buzzed. He glanced down, then looked at Nora. The clip is spreading. Emma's hands went cold. Caleb's going to see it. Jack didn't hesitate. Then we move faster. They didn't go to the ballroom. They didn't make speeches. They went to the places where truth lived. Doors, records, quiet conversations. Nora spoke to staff members who had once lowered their eyes when Derek walked by. She asked questions that made it safe to answer. A janitor named Miguel, mid-50s, wiry, kind eyes lined with exhaustion, finally admitted Derek had threatened his hours when Miguel refused to adjust a time card. A young receptionist named Tasha, early 20s, slim, nervous energy, nail-biting anxiety, confessed Derek had cornered her and hinted she owed him for keeping her job. Their voices trembled as they spoke, but they spoke. Emma listened, heart twisting. She wanted to laugh at the absurdity of it. Seattle's rain could soak everything, and still, a man like Derek could stay dry. Jack stayed quiet through it all. He didn't interrupt. He didn't fill the air with hero lines. He just watched faces, noted details, absorbed pain like it was data that mattered. When Nora gathered statements and screenshots, she turned to Jack. We can confront him, she said, but it has to be clean. Jack nodded. Clean. Emma swallowed. What does that mean? Jack's eyes held hers. No shouting, no threats, no show. We give him a choice that ends this without touching you. Emma wanted to believe that was possible. She also knew men like Derek only respected power. And Jack had it, even when he didn't flaunt it. They found Derek in a small conference room, reviewing emails like the world belonged to him. When he looked up, the smile appeared instantly. Mr. Mercer, Derek said, smooth as oil. I didn't expect. Nora placed the folder on the table. You should. Derek's gaze flicked to Emma. So you ran to him. Emma's face burned. Jack's voice cut in, calm and low. Don't talk to her like that. Derek's smile thinned. What is this? A rescue mission? Nora opened the folder and slid out papers, statements, timestamps, printed messages. Derek's eyes tightened. Jack leaned forward slightly, not aggressive, just present. You have two options, he said. You resign quietly today, or Nora files this and it goes public. The board, HR, legal, the donors, everyone. Derek's expression held for 2 seconds. Then it cracked, just enough to reveal anger underneath. You can't prove. Nora tapped the folder. We don't need to prove everything.
We need to prove enough. Ranger sat beside Jack, still and watchful. His calm was almost insulting, as if Derek didn't even deserve a bark. Derek's eyes darted, calculating. He was a man who lived on leverage, and for the first time, he felt it slip. Emma stood silent, heart pounding. She expected to feel triumph. She felt grief. Grief for how many people had been squeezed in silence. Derek finally exhaled. His smile returned, brittle. "Fine," he said.
"You'll have my resignation." Nora didn't blink. Today. Derek's gaze cut to Emma one last time, full of poison. "Enjoy your little fantasy." Emma's voice came out quiet but steady. "It's not a fantasy. It's my life." Derek left the room with his shoulders stiff, a defeated man trying to look undefeated. When the door closed, the silence that followed felt unfamiliar. Not danger silence. After silence. Emma's knees nearly buckled. Jack didn't touch her, but he stepped closer, enough to block the empty space where fear liked to creep in. Outside, rain hammered the windows. Inside, Emma realized something she had never allowed herself to imagine. This wasn't over. But for the first time, she wasn't alone in it. And that, more than any resignation letter, was what made the next day feel possible and terrifying. After supper. Seattle's rain finally eased into a thin, tired drizzle. Puddles on the sidewalk still held the city's lights, but the air felt cleaner, as if something heavy had been lifted and carried away. The morning after Derek Vaughn resigned, the center looked the same from the street. Glass doors, concrete steps, banners still fluttering near the entrance. Inside, though, the building breathed differently. It wasn't quieter, it was steadier. Emma Brooks walked in with her shoulders braced out of habit, then realized she didn't need to brace as hard. A few staff members met her eyes and didn't look away. Not pity, not gossip. Something closer to respect. Miguel offered a small nod as he rolled a cart past her, his lined face softened by relief. Tasha, the young receptionist with anxious energy who always seemed to be chewing her nails, lifted her chin and gave Emma a careful smile, like she was practicing courage. Emma returned the smile, and it felt strange, like wearing a coat that actually fit. She still worked her shift. She still moved through service halls and storage rooms. But now, when her cart wheels squeaked, nobody treated the sound like an invitation to ignore her. She was still the woman who cleaned. She was also the woman who had stood up in the storm and stayed standing. At noon, Nora Lane asked to see her in a small office near operations. Nora's posture was straight as ever, her eyes clear, her hair tidy in a way that suggested she didn't allow chaos to live too long on her shoulders. "It's done," Nora said simply. "The board accepted his resignation. HR is closing the inquiry. Your file will show no misconduct." Emma's lungs released a breath she hadn't known she was holding. "Thank you." Nora's expression stayed practical, but her voice softened a fraction. "Thank yourself. You said no." Emma left the office and stepped into the hallway, where the building noise returned. Doors closing, carts rolling, distant laughter from a meeting room. Her phone buzzed. Not a flood this time. Just one message. A link from Nora. The same clip that had spread the night before now sat buried under corrections and updates. A statement from the center condemned harassment, emphasized privacy, and confirmed Derek's departure without drama. Not a victory parade. A clean ending. Clean meant quiet. Quiet meant Caleb might be able to be a kid again. Emma's relief was sharp enough to sting. She leaned against the wall for a moment, eyes closed, letting herself feel the edge of it. Then she felt a presence near her, a familiar stillness. Ranger. The German shepherd sat a short distance away, black and tan coat sleek, ears erect, amber-brown eyes calm and watchful. No barking, no pulling, just there. The dog's quiet attention made the hallway feel less like a tunnel and more like a path. Jack Mercer stood behind Ranger, hands at his sides, his navy winter coat still mid-thigh, his red and black plaid flannel visible when the coat shifted. Faded jeans, brown low-cut boots. His left knee held that subtle stiffness, but his posture was steady, controlled, as if his body had learned to stand through worse weather than rain. He didn't look like a man who had won something. He looked like a man who had decided something. Emma's first instinct was still to protect. Protect her space. Protect Caleb. Protect the fragile peace. "What are you doing here?" she asked, though her tone lacked the bite it once carried. Jack's dark brown eyes met hers, warm at the edges, sharp at the center. "I wanted to see you," he said. "And I wanted to ask you something." Emma's stomach tightened. Questions could change lives. Jack's gaze lowered briefly to the floor, then lifted again. "I never meant for my name to become a shield you didn't ask for," he said. "But I'm not going to disappear." Emma searched his face for performance and found none. He wasn't selling devotion. He wasn't begging forgiveness. He was offering presence, which felt more dangerous than promises. "Caleb's been quiet," Emma admitted. "He's not broken. He's just watching, like he's waiting for the next thing to fall." Jack's jaw tightened, controlled grief flickering in his expression. "I know that look," he said softly. "I wore it for years." Emma didn't ask what he meant. She could see it in the way his eyes carried distance even when he stood close. Jack exhaled. "I want to see him," he said. "Not at a gala, not in a hallway, in a place where he can breathe." Emma hesitated. Every instinct told her to move slowly. But every memory of Caleb's sketchpad, of his question, of his brave face, told her this was a door she couldn't keep locked forever. "After supper," she said, the words slipping out before she could stop them. Jack's expression shifted. Something like surprise, something like gratitude. "Okay," he said. "After supper." That evening, the rain was lighter, almost embarrassed. Emma and Caleb walked to a small park near the water, where the grass was damp and the air smelled faintly of pine. The city lights blinked through the mist like distant stars that hadn't decided whether to shine. Caleb held his sketchpad under one arm and a scuffed baseball in the other. He wore a hoodie that was a little too big, the sleeves swallowing his hands. He kept glancing at Emma as if checking whether she would change her mind. Jack arrived a minute later. Same outfit, same steady presence. Ranger at his side, moving with calm purpose, scanning the park without tension. Caleb stopped walking. Jack didn't rush. He didn't call out. He simply stood there, letting the distance exist, letting the choice belong to the child. Emma felt her throat tighten. This was the moment she'd imagined and feared. A boy and a man facing a truth that could heal or hurt, depending on how it was handled. Caleb took one small step forward, then stopped again. "Hi," he said, voice thin with caution. Jack lowered himself carefully, bending through the stiffness in his left knee until he was nearer to Caleb's height, not towering. "Hey, Caleb," he said, gentle. "Can I join you?" Caleb glanced at Emma. Emma nodded, barely. Caleb held out the baseball like it was a question. You still know how to throw? Jack's mouth twitched into a small, honest smile. I'm a little rusty, he said, but I'm willing to learn again. That line broke something tight in Emma's chest. She realized Jack wasn't asking for a title. He was asking for time. Caleb tossed the ball, not hard, but not soft either. A test. Jack caught it clean. Caleb's eyes widened. A grin flashed, quick and bright, then he tried to hide it like it embarrassed him to hope. Ranger sat a few feet away, ears up, amber eyes tracking the ball's arc. He didn't intrude. He didn't demand attention. He simply kept watch, a quiet guardian of a fragile beginning. They played catch in silence at first. The ball moved back and forth like a heartbeat learning a new rhythm. Jack's movements were controlled, his posture steady. But Emma saw small signs. The way he favored his left knee. The way he breathed through discomfort without complaint. A man who had lived through pain and refused to let it make him cruel. Caleb started talking. Not about the gala. Not about the clip. About school. About a kid who stole his pencil. About a comic book character he liked. About how ducks looked like they were wearing tiny tuxedos. Jack listened, and when Caleb made a joke, Jack laughed. Quiet, surprised, real. The sound warmed the cold air more than Emma expected. Emma stood a few steps back, arms crossed, watching. She felt love and grief and fear braided together so tightly she couldn't separate them. For 6 years, she had been Caleb's whole world. Now the world was widening. She should have felt replaced. Instead, she felt relieved. And that relief made her want to cry. When the light faded, Caleb's throws slowed. He looked at Jack, hesitated, then asked the question Emma had dreaded most. Are you going to go away? The park seemed to hold its breath. Jack didn't answer fast. He didn't offer a pretty lie. He looked at Caleb like he was seeing the boy clearly, not as an idea, not as a scandal, but as a person with a tender heart. No, Jack said. His voice was low, steady. I'm not going to go away. Caleb swallowed. Promise? Jack's eyes softened, then sharpened with intent. I can't promise perfect, he said, but I can promise this. I'll show up, even when it's hard. Caleb stared at him a long second, then nodded once, like a soldier making a decision. Emma's chest ached. She stepped forward, unable to hold herself back. Jack looked up at her, rain misting his coat, flannel bright beneath it like a stubborn thread of warmth. He didn't reach for her hand. He didn't try to claim anything. He simply said, I'm here. Emma's voice came out small. We're scared. Jack nodded. I am too. For the first time, Emma realized fear didn't always mean danger. Sometimes it meant you finally had something worth protecting. Caleb, suddenly bold again, pointed at Ranger. Can he play too? Jack glanced at Ranger, then back at Caleb. He can sit with us, Jack said. That's kind of his thing. Caleb giggled, the sound bright against the damp night. Ranger blinked slowly, calm as ever, as if he approved of laughter. They walked home after, not as a perfect family, not as a headline, but as 3 people learning how to share the quiet. In the doorway of Emma's apartment building, Caleb looked up at Jack and said the word again. Softer this time, not for an audience. Dad. Jack's throat worked as if the word had weight. He nodded once. Yeah, he said. After supper. And after tomorrow. And the day after that. Emma watched them, and for the first time in years, she allowed herself to imagine a life that wasn't built on hiding. Not loud, not easy. Just real. Sometimes the miracle is not lightning in the sky. Sometimes it is a quiet yes spoken after years of fear, a door that finally opens, and a heart that chooses truth over pride. In daily life, many people carry burdens no one sees. A mother working late, a child longing for a safe place to belong, a man learning how to show up again. But God has a way of turning hidden pain into a new beginning. One small step, one honest moment, one act of courage can become the answer to a prayer that felt unanswered for a long time. If this story touched you, take a second to share it with someone who needs hope today. Comment below and tell us, have you ever seen a small miracle show up right in the middle of an ordinary day? And don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss the next story. May God bless you and your family, keep you safe, and guide you into brighter days.